So now we'll talk a little bit about the Closedown steps. And I want to just give you some important information here. As you know, that all student assessment data must be entered by November 1, 11:59 p.m. on that date. It's really important and very critical that all the teacher information has been submitted, that the teachers have submitted those student scores by that date. There's an opportunity then for you as data managers to clean up the data related to the student files, the teacher information and enrollment. You have an opportunity to go back and check with teachers and kind of clean up any kind of missing information and those kinds of things, and make sure that everything is in order prior to sending. We want you to ensure that you have initiated and approved those transfers. We know that there are students that are moving from location to location. We want to make sure that if you have a student in that situation, that you've initiated a transfer for them, or if there is a transfer request that you need to approve, that you go ahead and take care of that so that the other district, the district that's waiting, can get the records that they need and have the information that they need to process the reports. We want you to make sure that you are downloading all the desired reports in the system in order to create an archive. The archive in the KRA system is generated when you, as the data manager, go in and actually download a report. And so if there's no activity that's happening, there's nothing to archive. And so as you, again, go into the system and download these reports, you want to make sure that you're doing that frequently. And if you've not done so at this point, we want you to do that. Even today, you can go in and download a data downloads report and some of the other reports that we want to make sure that you download those reports now so that you generate an archive if you need to ever go back to that in the preceding years. And then lastly, we want to make sure that all of your cleanup and everything is taken care of by 11:59 p.m. on November 9th. So you'll have about a week between the time when the teacher data is due and your cleanup needs to happen.
All right, so what we're going to talk about is this data cleanup. And as the data manager, being in that role and doing what you need to do. So first, you want to make sure you address any student transfers. Take a look at the student scores and ensure the teachers have entered their data for the student scores in the KRA system. You also want to check teacher status. So for instance, there may be teachers that are no longer at your school or moved grade levels, whatever the case may be. But again, you want to make sure you update those teachers accordingly. You also want to make sure that you have the enrollments connected, that the student and teacher linkages are made by using the correct data collection token, which you see listed as KRAR22. And you'll want to make sure that is listed for all of your kindergarten students. And then finally is the point of authority. You want to make sure the point of authority is with your organization as well. We're going to kind of go over looking at that KRA system is really all of the sections that you will be going over as the data manager. Looking at that and preparing for this close down, you're pretty much going to be using all of these sections. The data collections, your users, you're going to be checking those students and transfers, and all of those sections we have listed here.
So now we're going to chat just a little bit about transfers. So there are two types of transfers we want to make sure that you are aware of. There are internal transfers. Those happen between the same district. So you might have two buildings in the same district and students would then move between those buildings. It happens with existing students, meaning that those students are already existing in the system. And that happens anytime there's a student that has been uploaded, a new student ID has been uploaded for a different location. So you might have a location A, they send a student to location B. When location B uploads that student's ID into the KRA system, it signals a transfer has occurred. So it's important to understand that. We want to make sure that you also understand that there's an external transfer, and that happens when a student moves from a different district into your district, or vice versa. You send a student from your district to another district. That happens again when the student's ID is loaded into the KRA system. And so it will trigger a transfer. It will either alert the sending district that that transfer has started and it's waiting on that receiving district to approve it, or vice versa. If you are the receiving district, you will receive a notice stating that there is a district that needs you to accept the transfer. And so it's really important at this point in the window that you as a data manager, you're going in and you're checking the transfers area in the KReady system to see if you have pending requests from other districts, or if your transfer request has not been approved yet. If not, we're encouraging you to reach out to that district, identify the data manager, and see if you can't get that data manager to make the approval so that your records are correct. These are, again, a recap of all the things that you need to make sure that you take care of as the data manager as you're closing down the window. And I want to point out this piece about the data collection, ensuring that you're using the correct data token for this window, which is KRA 22.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about transfers and point of authority as it relates to what's going to happen later in terms of EMIS reporting, because one of the important things to know about when you are making transfers and who has the point of authority in KReady is that this is going to affect which students show up on your scale score report at the end of the administration window, or the end of the system, before the system closes down. And so you want to make sure that the students that you need to report are in your scale score report. So this set of instructions is meant to help you with that. So if you are able to load students who enroll in your district on or before November 1st and approve your transfer request for those students who left your district on or before November 1st, this will make it so that the students who are with the district with the latest enrollment as of November 1st will be the ones who show up on your scale score report. It will be important that you not inactivate students who leave the district after November 1st. So even though that data cleanup window is open through November 9th, if you have a student who moves out on November 2nd or November 3rd, don't inactivate their scores, because you're still going to want them to show up you want to keep them active in KReady so that they will show up on your scale score report. So just again, in the EMIS manual, it just says the district with the latest enrollment should report the KRA results in EMIS, and there's no date listed in there. So to provide some clarification, and with the 20-day administration window, making it such that each district has potentially a different last day of the administration window, it will be easier for everyone if we all use the same date for our EMIS reporting for these students. So if you want to keep your students, again, who were in your district as of November 1st as active in your KReady system, then they will be on your scale score report, which is what you will need to then submit for your EMIS reporting when the administration ends.
First slide I'm going to show you here are the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment reports. All three of these are going to be available both during and after the assessment window. So let's start first with the first one here. It's the KRA percentage completion report. This is going to be an Excel file, and it's going to show the percentage of students who have completed the full, all items of the KRAR. So this is used to monitor any student completion progress. The next one up is the KRA completion by item report. Now, this again is going to be an Excel file, and it's going to show teachers all of their assessment items they have entered. So it's not going to show the score, but it's going to show if an item and score was entered for that specific item. And again, this is used to monitor to make sure all items are complete, or if you're looking to make sure one score wasn't entered yet and you're double checking to make sure the teacher entered that score. And then lastly is the language and literacy report. So this will show all students their language and literacy scores as well as their overall score. So this is used to monitor any, like I say, language and literacy scores for all of the students there. And this is available both during and after. So I want to show you how to pull one of these live. All right, so from your screen here, when you log into your KReady system, you want to select your administration. On the left-hand navigation, go to reports. And we're going to pull the first one, that KRA percentage completion report. Select that drop-down arrow and go down to the KRA percentage completion. Select your data collection. And then from here, if you are looking for specifically, if you want to look for the location, that teacher report, let's say specifically you're looking for just one of your schools if you have multiple schools, or if you're looking for as a district as a whole. You're looking for, let's say, you have multiple buildings, like I stated, and you want to look at all of those. So what we're going to do, I'm going to actually just do the location report here. And I'm looking for the specific location. I'm going to hit close. You will see here your report's going to pull up. So select download. All right. So once that downloads, open that up. So what you're going to see here is for that location, you're going to see the percentage of what has been completed for each of the domains. Not all of my mathematics scores are entered. Not all of my language and literacy have been entered. So you want to kind of reach out to that building, to reach out to those teachers and say, hey, I know that this is already done. Let's get these scores entered before November 1st. Let's go ahead and go back to our webinar. This next one here is going to show you 2 additional ones that you can pull both during and after. So the first one is the KRA student enrollment report. And this is going to show student and enrollment demographic data and teacher attachments. So this is used to verify that the student and teacher are connected. So this is again available both during and after. And then the last one here is the data downloads report. And this is showing all teachers and students and enrollment information that has been entered by your district for all of those teachers and students and enrollment. So this is used to check and make sure that all of that information was loaded. I find that report is very, very helpful for data managers, especially for the close down. So I want to go over that, and we're going to do that live so I can show you a little more detail. So again, we are going to select your reports, select your drop down. You're going to scroll down to the bottom where it says data downloads. Select your enrollment type. I'm going to do enrollments, and I'll show you why in a second. We're going to select the data collection. Now the region, this would be, let's say you have multiple districts you handle. That would be if you have all of those different ones listed. If you are just looking for your district, you can select that. And again, if you want to narrow it down to location, you can do that. I'm just going to do district. So I'm just going to select that and select that, request the district download and hit close. And you're going to see that the report currently is in processing status. You can always refresh. And once that pulls up, you can then download from here. So this, again, is more of a managerial report because it's going to make sure that you can see all of the CSV files that have been uploaded into the KReady system for all teachers, students, and enrollments. So all of the information in the beginning here, columns A through B or through H, is really all of your student information. Columns I, J, and K is your student or your teacher information. I'm sorry. And then the last 3 columns is what I want you to pay attention to here. The data collection is going to show you which assessment they are attached to. Column M is going to show you whether they are active or not. So again, if a student is active, that means that they are attached to a teacher. If, for instance, this one, Happy Bear, says no, you can also see there's no teacher attached. That's why the student is not showing as active. And then lastly is the point of authority, the POA. This is going to be helpful, especially when you have students coming in and out, so transfers. If you have some that maybe weren't approved, like we stated earlier, weren't approved by the previous district yet. And so you see that, yes, this student is active. Good Luck Bear is attached to Lindsay Wharton here, but let's say the point of authority is marked as no. That means that you want to reach out to that previous district and make sure that they approve that transfer. It is ultimately up to the previous district to accept or deny the transfer. If you need to re-trigger the transfer, let's say they didn't get it, you can always do a quick student file upload and it will trigger another transfer request for that student. So that way you can go ahead and then reach out to them again if you'd like and say, I just did it on this day. Can you please make sure that you got that, and go from there. All right, so the last three here we have is, the first one is the KRA Scaled Score Report. So this is going to show all your students, all the teacher, the students' overall scores, as well as basically down to each item level, what that score is. This is what you want to use for EMIS. So you would download this as a CSV, and this is going to be available to you after the window closes, after the data manager cleanup and after the window closes. The next one is the KRA ISR report. So this one is, again, going to be an Excel file. It's going to have all of the student information, but what's different about this one is the first column, column A, is going to have a link that'll be for a PDF. So you could then select that PDF and download an actual individual student report for each of those students. This is more designed to be shared with families. So if the teacher hasn't already done so, when the time comes after the assessment window, you would be able to, as a data manager, pull that. And then lastly here is the KRA ISR generation report. So this is going to show an Excel file for all teachers that have generated an ISR. So really it's used to monitor. So if any ISRs were generated by the teacher, you would be able to see on this report. And now this report is available both during and after the assessment window. So next is going to be the timeline. So as you can see here, July 1st is when the K-Ready system opened for the new administration window. Then the second one here is the 20th day of instruction. That was for each district, for each school, it was different for each. So that was when the instructional day ended, that you weren't able to do the assessment for those students. Then you've got November 1 as when the data collection closes. That means no scores can be entered. No teachers aren't able to go back in there and adjust anything, add anything. November 9th is when the data cleanup window ends. So that is the end date for you data managers, that you want to make sure that you have cleaned up those transfers. You took a look at those teachers and made any necessary adjustments. And then lastly here is late November is when the reports will be available for you to download as a data manager, meaning that's scaled score report, as well as that ISR report.
Is a great resource for all things related to the assessment, certainly from the standpoint of the background and context. There are great many resources on ODE's website that will help you and help your teachers, certainly as they're implementing the assessment, but certainly in addition to that, help data managers. There are pieces of content available for you to provide support. There's timeline information. There are updates with regards to EMIS reporting and things of that nature. So we want to make sure that you are using that site to gather information to help you do what you need to as a data manager working this particular assessment. There's also the Ohio K-12 Help site that we provide support from a technical perspective around the K-Ready system and the use of that. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of a few things that we think might help you and just show you where you can get to those resources that we think will be extremely beneficial as you're working to gather things for this particular window. So if you come to Ohio K-12 Help and click on the K-Ready support button, it'll bring you to the space here specific for the kindergarten online support. And if you click on Data Manager Support, that will bring you to all the resources that we've gathered for you. And what I really want to point to are a couple of things that we think will help you. Again, as I mentioned, we have some resources, different types of resources. We have video resources. So here you see on formatting, the leading zero. We have other resources that have videos attached to them. We want to make sure that you are aware. We know that in these webinars, we give a lot of information, and it seems like we go really very fast because of the time. We want to make sure that we cover all the topics that we have before us in the time allotted. But we want you to know that you can certainly go back to the webinar video itself and watch that, and I'll show you where you can find those. But also that the specific topics that we talk about. So for instance, I'm going to go down to reports, and you just heard a little bit about some of these reports. So if I click on accessing the KRA Scale Score Report, there's going to be a quick guide that walks me through the steps, the exact steps on how to do that, and a video that goes along with that. So if you missed anything in the details of what we just went over regarding how to access a particular report, you can always come back to this section and you kind of walk through that and get the information again. So we want to make sure that you are aware of where to find these resources and how to access them and to use them. I had mentioned earlier about the video for the webinar. If you come to the data manager site and click on more training or more information about training, it'll bring you to the training space, which I believe is where you came in order to sign up for this webinar. After the video is posted, you will find it here under webinar materials. And an example of that is showing here from the webinar that occurred previously. And so we want to make sure that you are aware that you can come back to this space and get the information that will help you. If you missed anything in today's webinar, if you have additional questions, you can always come back and go back through the material that we present for you here.
Is it okay to have yes and no in PO in the point of authority column for a student who is inactive? And so I want to stress this, like for that, it's going to be individual student basis. So depending on that student. So if the student left and the new district maybe hasn't triggered a transfer request to you yet, but the student's inactive on your end, that point of authority, yes, would still say yes. It is up to that new district to trigger the transfer request. So in that case, then yes, it would be normal to see that. A no as an active and yes as in point of authority. But if it is marked as, let's say on your end, you had a student that came in and you triggered the transfer request and you do see that the student is active on your end, the teacher sees the student, but this point of authority is still marked as no, then you're going to want to reach out to that previous district and find out, make sure that they approve that transfer so that point of authority will turn to yes for that student. All right, so the next one here is they are not seeing students in either requests from others or your requests. And we have had students from both situations. So this is a known issue and is in the process of getting corrected. So when you're looking at each one of those tabs, that you would be able to see that. So the vendor is aware of that, and we are in the process of getting hearing. As soon as we hear back, we will let you know on that.
When are KRA scores available for EMIS reporting? I think the question is really related to when you get the scores from the KReady system. And as we mentioned in the timeline, the expectation is to have that sometime in mid to late November. Certainly as we get the scores ready from the system, we'll make an announcement and communicate to data managers that scores are ready.
What about students who have withdrew from kindergarten, or retained students or anything like that? If the student is no longer with, in that specific grade, if it's a retained student, they do not need to do the KRA again. So you can make that student inactive. And then I have a student who is no and no, and they are not of their district and not sure why they are showing. So somehow it could have been uploaded in error. So if it's marked as not active, and if they are marked as not having the point of authority, you're fine. Nothing's going to happen. This student will not show on your report, nor will that student show in any roster. So you can just disregard that specific student. So transfers. Again, transfers are created when the SSID number is entered, whether that's manually or it's through the bulk loader. So if that SSID number has been used in the K-Ready system previously this year, it's going to trigger a transfer request. So it will go, when you're doing it manually, you'll have a button that'll state request transfer. You will also, if you're doing it, the thing with the manually is you're not going to be able to see whether for sure that transfer was triggered. So I always like to go back to the bulk loader when adding a student manually is triggering the transfer, just to make sure that the transfer was triggered. So I go down to the bulk loader. I know the students there, so I'm just going to do a quick student file upload with we're just going to actually go with specifically the student required fields. And then when you do that, it's going to show whether a transfer was triggered when you download those results. So in the message part there, so that'll show you there. But again, like I say, those are triggered as soon as that SSID number is used again in the system. And then it is up to that previous district to accept or decline the transfers. And we do have more detailed out in our page here. So because I want to show you exactly where this lives, because I also have videos as well. We have videos on here, and we have more of a detailed explanation for both the student transfers here. So, and again, this is available in our additional resources page that you can see the link, and tells you exactly, does the screenshots for each of these as well as the videos. All right, so here's a great example. So I'm seeing a student that I do not have the POA for, but when I look at transfers, it looks like the other district did accept it. So do I upload the student again using the student file as mentioned above, or do I just enter the student in the upload? So this is a great case. So for some reason or another, so it could have been a network connection issue, something is just not showing that the point of authority is now with you. So in that case, yes, upload that student file again, just with that student information. Let that other previous district know, hey, I just triggered a transfer request, and if they could accept that. And then from there, give it, to the next day, double check and make sure then the point of authority is with that student, or that you do have the point of authority for that student. So doing it again, like I say, triggering that transfer request again will help. Like I say, always try it again, and let's make sure if after that second time you see they do accept it and it's still not showing, maybe it's not a glitch, or maybe it wasn't a network issue. Send it over, contact us here at the help desk, and we can dig a little deeper into finding that issue for you. I have a student who enrolled prior to school starting. He is showing his active, but not the POA. So they would like to know how to make the student inactive. So how you do that is you remove the teacher from the student. So to remove a student from a teacher to make them inactive, so that status here that you're seeing. So we are going to take a wish bear here. We're going to open that student up. They're no longer with us. You just remove the student from the teacher. But again, you want to make sure you get that transfer request from the new district. You don't want that student hanging out in limbo. So as long as you know if the point of authority is now not with you, like you stated, it is with that new district, but it's still showing active in your end, then fantastic. From there, remove the teacher. Select remove and remove. Now, when you pull that report again, that student will show as no inactive and no with the point of authority column. Okay, so for one that has incorrect SSID and incorrect spelling, please reach out to the help desk and we can help get that corrected for you and the correct SSID as well as the correct spelling of that student's information. And going back again, when it comes to, is there a situation, is there a reason why a student would show inactive, but the point of authority is going to remain with you? Yes. Again, that would be that the student maybe left you and you remove the student from the teacher, making them inactive. But the new district, the new school did not trigger the transfer request. So with that, yes, the point of authority would still remain with you, but the student's inactive. Like I said, you don't want the student to kind of, the scores, be out there in limbo right now. So you want to make sure you don't remove the teacher from the student until the new school, new district triggers that transfer request. So that way, those scores are going to transfer to that new district, to that new teacher over there.
I'm glad you said that. I was going to reiterate and reinforce that from Sophie's conversation earlier, folks. I know that it may seem imperative to have students who aren't active not show, for instance, say on a report, or not, you not be responsible for them. But on some levels, we need to make sure that they are attached somewhere. And so we want you to know that making the student or the student inactive or the teacher is kind of the last thing you want to do. You want to confirm that they are attached at some place, if at all possible. Things are a little bit different because of the assessment window and the start of school and the end of the 20 days. That varies per location. And so there may be some fluctuations based upon that. So we want to make sure that you're not just simply, unattaching students so that, in air quotes here, your reports are super squeaky clean. It's important that those students' data is attached at some place at some point. So
the question about the student not on an IEP or who is not an English learner, and the teacher used the not scoreable or NS option. So the N is different from NS. N is a valid score on the observation items on the assessment. So N is a valid score for any student on the KRA in the observational items section. The NS is the not scoreable, and that's the one that would only be valid for a student who is on an IEP or an English learner. If the student doesn't demonstrate the skill on the direct assessment items, they should get a 0 for those items, not blank. So the NS is an accommodation for a student who doesn't have access to the item because of a disability or because of their language differences.
I do want to show one quick last thing here that when a teacher, you need to update a teacher. And I want to do this live real fast. There was a question here asking that when the teacher is no longer with the district, what they need to do. So if you are in your users and you have just going to go with a teacher 2 here. I know they left, so I am going to make them inactive. I'm going to remove the teacher role from them. I'm going to hit save, but you want to go a little bit further here. Just besides doing that, you then want to remove them from your district. So when you select organizations and you select your administration level, it automatically defaults to region. So change it to districts. And from here, you would remove the teacher from your district. So now what you would then see is you wouldn't see them in your users. They would not be attached to your district, so you wouldn't have to worry about them coming up if you wanted to clean up your users. And if you're like, you know, me here, I have a 106 users. I want to clean this up because I know I only have 100. I would go through and do it that way. All right, if you have new students that you have recently added and they are not showing in your transfers, if you've done that via manually or through the bulk loader. Bulk loader, you will see if you have triggered the transfer request. If you did it manually, you're not going to be able to really see if that transfer request was triggered right now. So what you can do is do a new student file upload and trigger that transfer request again. And you will also have a record and see if those two students did trigger a transfer request to the previous district.
Take care and have a wonderful afternoon, folks.